The kitchen light is still on. It's 2:13 a.m. A child no older than 11 stands silently by the sink, washing dishes too large for their hands. The water is too hot, but they don't flinch. Behind them, laughter still echoes faintly from the living room. Adult laughter, the kind that doesn't include them anymore. On the counter sits a pile of unpaid bills, and next to it, a small backpack already packed for tomorrow. Because somewhere between childhood and now, they stopped asking for help. Not because they didn't need it, but because they learned no one was coming. Why does a child stop being a child before their time even begins? Why do some kids learn silence instead of play, responsibility instead of imagination, survival instead of safety? Psychologists call them parentified children. But that clinical label hides something deeper, something heavier. Because what really happens when a child grows up too fast is not maturity. It is adaptation under emotional pressure. And the mind, when forced to adapt too early, doesn't develop evenly. It fractures in quiet ways. So the real question is not just what happens to them, but what kind of adult emerges from a childhood they never actually lived. Segment 1, the invention of the small adult. The child does not suddenly look different. There is no obvious rupture that alerts adults to what is happening internally. Instead, the change accumulates in micro-adjustments of behavior. The child becomes quieter in moments where they should be loud, more observant in moments where they should be careless, more controlled in spaces where they should be chaotic. They begin to anticipate needs before they are spoken. A tone in a parent's voice becomes a warning signal. A slight change in footsteps, a delay in response, a sigh from another room. These are no longer background details. They are data points. The child starts building an internal model of emotional weather patterns inside the household, predicting storms before they arrive. And with that prediction comes responsibility. Because once you can predict distress, you begin to feel responsible for preventing it. This is where the psychological burden deepens. The child is no longer just responding to events. They are trying to manage outcomes. If tension rises, they adjust their behavior. If conflict seems near, they intervene or withdraw. If silence feels wrong, they attempt to fix it. Over time, this creates a distorted sense of agency. The child believes stability depends on their vigilance. That peace is something they must maintain, not something they are allowed to experience. Meanwhile, their own emotional needs are quietly postponed. Hunger is ignored, fatigue is dismissed, fear is minimized, because attention is always directed outward, toward the emotional state of others. In adulthood, this often translates into a personality that appears highly responsible, emotionally intelligent, even mature. But beneath that surface is a nervous system trained for constant monitoring. Rest can feel unsafe. Stillness can feel like neglect of duty. Even joy can carry an undercurrent of suspicion, as if something important is being missed while they are happy. And so the cycle continues, not because the child chose it, but because their developing brain learned one central rule too early. Survival depends on staying alert. Segment 2, the science of lost childhood. Over time, this internal belief system becomes so deeply embedded that it no longer feels like a belief at all. It feels like reality. The person does not consciously think, "I must earn my worth." Instead, they feel uneasy whenever they are not producing, helping, fixing, or anticipating someone else's needs. Stillness begins to resemble failure. Rest begins to resemble danger. This is because the nervous system has been conditioned, not just the mind. When a child grows up in an environment where emotional stability depends on their behavior, their body learns to stay in a constant state of readiness. Even in safe environments later in life, that physiological pattern does not automatically shut off. Heart rate subtly increases during conflict. Muscles tense during silence. Sleep becomes shallow when responsibilities are not actively being managed. In relationships, this often manifests as overfunctioning. They become the partner who listens more than they speak, who repairs more than they express, who anticipates needs before they are voiced. At first, this is praised as care, but gradually imbalance forms because they are not just giving love, they are performing safety. And when love is tied to performance, boundaries begin to blur. Saying no feels like abandonment. Asking for space feels like rejection. Receiving support feels uncomfortable, even suspicious, as if it must be repaid immediately. In professional environments, the same pattern emerges. They are dependable, efficient, and difficult to replace. But beneath that competence is often exhaustion masked as discipline. They are praised for resilience, while quietly normalizing burnout as a baseline state. Psychologically, this is one of the most paradoxical outcomes of early parentification. External success paired with internal insecurity. A life that looks stable from the outside, yet feels constantly unstable from within. Segment 3, the adult they become. Fast forward 10 or 15 years, that same child is now an adult. And from the outside, they look fine, stable, reliable, independent, the kind of person others depend on. But internally, something strange happens in moments of stillness. Silence does not feel peaceful, it feels unfamiliar. Rest does not feel deserved, it feels unsafe. Because the nervous system was trained in one environment, chaos that required control. So they unconsciously recreate it. They overwork, overthink, overgive, and attract relationships where they must earn their place repeatedly. Psychologists call this compulsive caregiving, a pattern where individuals feel compelled to take responsibility for others' emotions, even at the cost of their own well-being. It is not kindness in the pure sense, it is conditioning. And the most tragic part, they rarely recognize it as trauma, because nothing about their childhood looked dramatic enough to qualify. There were no headlines, no interventions, just years of being needed, too early, too consistently, too completely. The twist in application. But here is where it becomes unsettling. You might not think you were one of these children. You might not remember crisis. You might not recall responsibility being forced on you. But ask yourself this, did you ever feel like you had to stay emotionally useful to be accepted? Did you learn to read moods before speaking? Did you become the reliable one without ever being asked if you wanted that role? Because growing up too fast is not always about visible hardship. Sometimes it is emotional invisibility. And when the mind grows in that environment, it doesn't fully lose childhood. It just buries it deep, so deep that adulthood becomes a performance of stability, covering a nervous system still waiting for permission to be a child. And the strangest part, even now your brain may still be operating under that early programming. The amygdala still reacting to emotional unpredictability as threat. The prefrontal cortex still trying to fix situations that were never yours to fix. Because the mind does not measure time the way we do. It measures patterns. And patterns, once learned, do not easily disappear. There is something quietly haunting about children who grow up too fast, because they do not lose their childhood in a single moment. They lose it gradually, one responsibility at a time, one silent agreement at a time, one forgotten need at a time. And long after they become adults, a part of them is still standing in that same kitchen, washing dishes, listening for footsteps, waiting for someone to finally say, "You can stop now." But no one ever does. And so they keep going. Not because they are strong, but because they never learned another way to exist. And the most dangerous part, they often become parents themselves, carrying forward a version of love shaped by obligation rather than safety, passing down a silence they never chose. So the question is not just what happened to them, it is what continues to happen through them. Because childhood does not end when you grow up. Sometimes it just changes its form, and it waits until the next generation begins to repeat it. And that is why you need to watch the next video.